Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Falkirk. I know that a lot of you have made a long journey today. We're certainly very grateful for you coming down from Aberdeen and Glasgow and Edinburgh and Dundee to tell the people of Falkirk what to think. That's very considerate of you. Very considerate of you indeed. Well, I'm here today to give you several messages, and I'm going to be here as long as you're here. And let me first lay some names on you. Private John May, Private John Galloway, Lieutenant John Hunter, Private James Scott, Private William Anderson. Just some of the names of the officers and men, quote, belonging to the Eastern District of Stirlingshire, who fell in the service of their country during the South African War, 1899 to 1902, and inscribed upon the very impressive memorial which we are standing beside today. And it lists 38 names of the 22,000 British soldiers who died in what has become known as the Boer War. And it depicts a Highland soldier dressed in khaki, standing over and protecting a wounded comrade from attack. And as such, it speaks of bravery, of loyalty, of defending what's ours naturally and without hesitation. And in many ways, that's what we are doing today here in Falkirk. Standing up naturally and without hesitation to defend the local people from the potential dangers of hundreds of unvetted young men being shipped into this community, but also communities the length and breadth of the United Kingdom. And you know, we instinctively oppose this. We instinctively oppose what is happening, for example, at the Cladhan Hotel and in hotels throughout Scotland and the rest of the United Kingdom. Because the movement of these young men into our country offends our values and our sense of fairness. Now, what do I mean by that? Let me explain. You know, there's a much heralded British value which can be summarised as women and children first, and that's called the Birkenhead Drill. And it relates to an incident in 1852 off the coast of South Africa again, when the British troopship HMS Birkenhead hit a rock. The colonel in charge, who was a Scotsman, Alexander Seaton, ordered the men to stand fast, lest the lifeboats became overwhelmed. Consequently, all the women and children were saved, and many of the men perished while standing to attention. So that idea of women and children first entered our national story and became part of what is our cultural attitude today. Yet, when we look at the inhabitants of the Cladhan Hotel or any other hotel, young men who claim to be escaping persecution, we can see that their values are not our values, because They clearly did not put the women and the children first when they were so-called escaping their so-called persecution. They seem to prefer the phrase men first and men only. Women and children last, if at all. And that's alien to our values. It offends our values. And it's demoralising to us to see such behaviour being rewarded. In our view, putting yourself in front of the women and children in this way and leaving them behind while you, quote, escape persecution, that's something that should not be tolerated. It's insulting to our intelligence that these people across the way, the Stand Up for Open Borders people, should try to tell us that these young men are being persecuted, but somehow the women and children that they've left at home are not. So why are we as a nation tolerating this? Well, we only tolerate it because it's the law. Since 1954, Britain has been a member of something called the United Nations Refugee Convention, the UN Refugee Convention. And this outdated convention legalises, that is to say, it makes legal any and all methods of entry into our country if that person is doing so in order to claim asylum. So take the channel crossers. Coming across the channel in a dinghy would normally be considered an illegal method of entry. Hiding in the back of a lorry would normally be considered illegal. These things are normally wrong. You are normally breaking our law of entry, and you should normally go to prison for doing so. However, under Britain's membership of the UN Refugee Convention, if you're using these routes to claim asylum, then it's considered to be legal. It's considered to be lawful. It's considered to be okay. Well, not in our book. It's ridiculous that we are obliged to take these people seriously. It's ridiculous that we are required to put them up, usually in hotels, but elsewhere at our expense. It's ridiculous that we are required to listen patiently to their most often tall tales. So what is the answer? Well, folks, I'm here to bring you the good news, and I'm here to bring you a message of hope. We have always had an answer to stop the small boats, and to stop them within hours. And we've had that answer since the small boat crisis began in 2018. First thing we do is we leave the UN Refugee Convention, which legalises this otherwise unlawful behaviour. It's no longer fit for purpose in 2025. It's 70 years out of date. When we do that, when we leave the UN Refugee Convention, we will be free to get back to the situation that it always should have been. That is, we will be free to say to people that if you enter our country by crossing the English Channel in a dinghy or stowing away in a lorry or via any other method outside the official port of entry, then you are breaking our law. And number three, that means you are going to prison. Thank you. And once we start doing that, once we start convicting and sending people to prison for crossing the channel illegally, as we should have done since the very start, when it was clear that our membership was outdated and no longer fit for purpose, then I assure you, and mark my words, the channel traffic will dry up in a matter of hours. That's the direction in which this conversation must move, and indeed is moving. And make no mistake, it is the politicians to blame. It is the politicians who make these decisions. It's the John Swinneys of this world. It's the Keir Starmers of this world. They are to blame. The fraudulent asylum seekers are only taking advantage of the opportunities which are offered up to them by this political class. So it is the politicians and the NGOs, some of whom are over there, who are funded by our own taxpayers' money, who are to blame for this situation. And just as the men listed on that war memorial and all of the war memorials around the country did their duty to their country, our duty to our country is much more easily done. Our duty is to vote out all the politicians of the SNP, the Green, the Labour, the Lib Dems and the Tories and others who support mass immigration into Scotland and who support endless fraudulent asylum seeking. And we will have our chance on the 7th of May in 2026. We will vote them out and we will get our people into Holyrood. And when we get our people in, we will work to defund the pro-open border, globalist, anti-Scottish NGOs of their taxpayer funding. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll be back in a minute. My name is Alistair McConnachie of Campaign Group, A Force for Good. Thank you for listening.